Hi, welcome to Outlaw Bookseller with me, Stephen Lee Andrews, writer, bookseller, collector. And today I want to talk a bit about limited editions and special editions for collectors, in parenthesis, or inverted commas, as we used to say. And I've been buying limited edition SF books for a long time, since about 1986-87, when I started. I think my first ones were from Kerosena and Morrigan, run by friends of mine, or guys who became friends of mine, as I was a customer in terms of stocking the books in the bookshop I worked in, buying them myself. So I've got a lot to say on the subject. And we've seen more and more in recent years how things like Folio Society and Eastern Press, which have been with us a long time, have become more and more collectible. And there's things like Subterranean and Centipede. But I often think there's a real difference between these sort of manufactured rarities and genuine limited editions for serious collectors, because I think there's often two different sort of philosophies around them. And I'm going to begin by showing you a clip of film I filmed a few weeks back, which is an unboxing of the latest edition of the Dune Trilogy from Ace, which was a couple of years ago, and I decided to pick it up because, of course, recently I did the unboxing of the Golank's Emporium edition, so we'll have a look at that now. Let's get that out of the way. And yeah, oversize sort of thing. This is really hard doing this one-handed. You want to try it? It really isn't a lot of fun. Let's just get the box out of the way and stuff. So what have we got? Let's see. So this is it. On the sofa there, that's where the cat likes to sleep. Dune Saga. Yeah, oh, we've got a little bit of moisture there on the shrink. Don't like that. Okay, well, we'll have a look, see how that pans out in a moment. Quite handsome at a glance, wrong way round. Yeah, nice and colourful at least. Right, yeah, so as I say, there's a kind of bit of moisture on the exterior of this shrink. This is nice thick shrink wrap, though, it has to be said. It's not that thin stuff, because the moisture is condensation, because this was left outside my house overnight. It was delivered at 4:10 yesterday afternoon, and there was somebody in. There was no knock on the door. This was an eBay purchase. I'm not sure who the courier was, and just left then. I didn't get the email saying it's been delivered until this morning, and I was checking my email last night, because as you do, you know, and in this postmodern world where we're always checking our email. So that's rather crap, and straight away I can see we've got that's either a bit of misgluing there or a slight split on the slipcase. That's not much cop, just there, you notice that there? So we'll have a closer look now at the books themselves. Right, there we go. So there's is that a lateral view? Who knows? Do look quite nice, don't they? So let's have a look at that again. Yeah, that's not glued too well there. And a little bit of surface moisture there. Dune Saga books 1 to 3, very prominent barcode on the bottom. This is out of print now, but retailers still have copies out there. So yeah, I've seen worse examples. Let's take a close look at the books themselves. Dune. I do like these jackets, I have to say, they're nice. And yeah, you've got the decoration underneath the jacket as well, and the title there's embossed in, as you can see, and the old quotation there, "Fear is the mind killer," which, you know, never seems very eloquent to me, I have to say, and probably true, I'm sure, but, and you know, it's not exactly the paragon of great writing, though, in my opinion. Just watch as more people unsubscribe, Steve. And you've got decorated end papers. Flip it over. Yeah, let's have a look. Is that a flaw? Is that part of the artwork? It's difficult to tell, isn't it, really, that there at the top. So here we go. And yeah, and it's hard to tell. That looks like a flaw as well. And you've got more decoration, another embossing there, and different decorated end papers. So, you know, as a package, they're quite nice, I guess. Yeah, and it's got a stained tone text block there, which on camera looks blue. I'm not sure how it'll look when you see it, but it's actually sort of very sort of deep teal green, really, is the color it is. But yeah, quite nice. On to volume 2, Dune Messiah. And I guess that's Maud Deeb there, or Maud Dib, whatever. It's a funny thing. Richard Rempel the other day was saying that people had, you know, chewed him out for mispronouncing things. And I mean, who knows? I mean, unless you've got the author there in front of you, you don't know, do you? So, you know, if it's a word in English, it's slightly different. But you've got to account for accent and things. I mean, come on, you know. So let's take a look at this. And again, title embossed and different artwork underneath the rear of the jacket. I will face my fear, and we've got, as say, guilt there on the spine, which is fairly standard. We flip that back over. Let's have a look at the binding. Well, you know, there's not, let's see, it looks as if it's signatures, but it's not. And again, a tone text block, and let's flip that off again. And we've got a different embossing there. I guess I should have done this on a table, but this is an off-the-cuff thing, and you know, we do things off the cuff very often here. And yeah, quite nice, I guess. And that means I've now got 2 copies of Dune Messiah in hardcover. Who'd have thunk it? Children of Dune, the 3rd in the series. I was discussing the different film adaptations with somebody on the channel recently, and of course the one I always go back to is the TV series, which is much better than anything. It has the best casting. It probably doesn't have the best effects, but suspension of disbelief is the thing. It's got Ian McNeice as Baron Harkonnen, who's just wonderful. He's better than anybody else as Harkonnen. He has that large Shakespearean character, and as you see, much the same features on this one as the others. Again, different embossings, different artwork underneath the jacket, and we've got the old decorated end papers. So yeah, that's quite nice, isn't it? I quite like that, I must say. So this is the first Children of Dune hardcover I've ever owned. I probably just already said that when he just got up in the morning. So, you know, they're quite nice. I have seen copies and other videos of people who received them. They've been in an absolute state. You know, the thing you've got to remember is that this really isn't a limited edition or small press book, so it's not done with the same care as that sort of thing would be done. And this is the thing, there was a time when major publishers would do limiteds with the same sort of care and attention as small presses, but that generally ended a long time ago. I was chatting with somebody on the channel about these sort of very things and how the dynamics have changed, and he said he knows collectors who don't even take things out the shrink wrap. Well, you know, I can understand that. I mean, I've got LPs I've never played, but that's because I bought them for the iconography and I played the CDs, and I used to have them years ago and then let them go and wanted them back again. The fact kind of remains that really, you know, I think you should read everything you buy. I mean, I can understand having multiple copies, you know, some copies don't, but if you buy a hardcover, it's there to be read. You know, I completely feel it's there to be read. And if the book is well made, and if you have learned the art of handling books, because it is an art, then, you know, you shouldn't have a problem. But yeah, I'm quite pleased with that. I'm not happy about that there. But my suspicion is, I mean, the way these things are produced, you've got to remember that this is mass production, that quite a lot of these were made. And, you know, these things are run off presses and what have you. And they're not sort of handled, you know, in the same way things would be by small press, where things are done by hand, you know, done very carefully. It's just not done that way. So there you go. That's Dune and Ace. And I'm quite pleased with those, really. I had fairly low expectations. I don't have the same expectations I'd have of somebody like Folio, where you pay out a lot of money. But like I say, my issue with Folio is that everything's too canonical these days. And, you know, and it's the same with Eastern Press. Some of the stuff they're putting in to their list, it's going to be here today, gone tomorrow. It's just because they're popular. They're not really books which will ever attain classic status in the long run, but that's just me being a grumpy old man, maybe. So anyway, that's Dune. On to the next bit of filming. I'll see you soon. Next, we're going to take a look at the John Wyndham series in a slipcase that Folio issued several years ago. And I'm not really too bothered if something like a Folio Society or an Eastern Press is a reprint. That doesn't bother me at all. You know, I'm more interested in the true first edition, the first impression of the first variant of the book in hardcover. That's what I go for. But it'd be interesting to look at. I got these in the sale, so it was round about £60, 62 I think it was, and with the postage it came up to about 70. But I've been thinking for a long time I'd like to have these, because I cannot understand why Penguin don't reissue John Wyndham's books in hardcover through the Michael Joseph imprint, which did them originally. There's a Penguin cloth bound of Day of the Triffids. There was a Day of the Triffids Golax Masterwork about 20 years ago with a jacket. I've got that, I've shown that on the channel. but you know, reprints of things like the Chrysalids, Midwich Cuckoos, Crake and Wakes, all of them in fact. I mean, there's been a couple of Gollancz laminated boards copies for Masterworks, but they're really not very nice. So I decided to go for the folio ones. So let's take a look at them and we'll critique them as we go. Right, well, as you can see, nice plain slipcase. There's a little bit of cloth on it. It's not really luxurious cloth. It's quite nice, and there's some embossing and gilting there. There we go. And of course we see the, let's see, the six-fingered hand of a mutant from the Chrysalids, of course, which I've highlighted as the book to read for a beginner in SF, especially a young person, and all the grades, and there's a video about that on the channel as well. And what have we got? So we have The Day of the Triffids, his first novel as John Wyndham, because of course he published books before that under other names. Then we have the Midwich Cuckoos and the Chrysalids, which are slightly later. They pass over the Crake and Wakes. I think time hasn't been kind to Kraken. It's the one which seems the most, and I hesitate to use this word, the most dated. I'm going to say the most of its time, the most 1950s. It's still a great book, but for me there is a slight feeling of being rushed about it after the success of Triffids, and Midwich and the Chrysalids are my favourites, and I think are his most assured and best books, and the ones which have the widest appeal as well, I would say. So, as with the vast majority of Folio Society books here, what we have are royal format hardcovers with quarter binding, laminated boards illustrations with a very sort of non-slick laminate. The slipcase, as obviously this is a set, and they're nice. I'm not massively fond of the kind of illustrations which Folio are doing these days. They seem to me to be too influenced by comic books and manga art currently, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm a big comics fan myself, or used to be. I don't really read comics now, but I would like to see a more classic, sort of more careful, considered form of illustration come back, but of course that probably costs more money. The illustration on the rear of the board is the same as on the front, and as you see here, the gilt embossing on the spine, the green on Triffids, the pink or magenta on Chrysalids, and the orange on Midwich reflects the predominant colour of the illustrations on the sort of front and rear of the books. Now, for my money, the best thing about these editions, apart from the fact that they are hardcovers, is they have really nice paper. It's not thin, it's not too thick, it's not too slick, it's not too rough, it's just right. Really nice typeface, so they're very readable. And that's the thing which I like the most about Folio. For readability, I do think they're absolutely excellent. I think they're far better than a lot of previous editions of classic books. So for sheer readability, then I do give them pretty much a 10 out of 10. I think they're great that way, I have to say. These particular editions, in terms of them being special, what was also attractive to me was the introductions by Adam Roberts, I'm a big fan of, and Adam, of course, is a great SF writer, academic, really knows his stuff, and there are interesting introductions in each of these, which he often takes a left field look at the books, and I think that's a good thing, because when it comes to Wyndham, we do need a bit of revisionist history, because the cozy catastrophist thing, which Aldous sort of came up with, does sort of hang around somewhat, and I don't essentially agree with it, never have. I actually think Wyndham's quite savage. His look at the world through the lens of social Darwinism and the whole thing about the survival of the fittest, which is a big question in all his mature and serious books. It's really, really important, you know, and he presents us with those arguments and we can debate them amongst ourselves. And I think that really is what makes him a very special writer, alongside his genius for style and accessibility, which really can't be faulted. I mean, the best way to get across those sort of ideas and to get ordinary people to read SF was to present them in the way that Wyndham did, and we cannot fault him for that at all. So Adam's introductions are really fascinating. I don't essentially agree with all his points, but they're absolutely marvellous. So if you're ever thinking of buying these, buy them, and you're a Wyndham fan, buy them for those alone and for the readability. We're just going to go handheld a moment here, so apologies for any shake, because you do this with one hand, it's quite difficult. And yeah, you've got nice plain end papers there, and as I say, really nice paper. There's a classic example of one of the illustrations. There's the kids and the Midwich Cuckoos, and absolutely lovely. Yeah, I mean, great for readability. Marvellous. That's the scene, obviously, where the women are presented by Mrs. Zellaby with a quasi-ultimatum of what's actually happening in Midwich. If you haven't read the book, you won't understand that. If you have, and yeah, really nice. I mean, personally, I'm not that fussed on having illustrations at all. I could live without them, but I guess they add something. I personally don't think they're necessary. So there you go. Very nice. I think you'll agree. Back in the day, of course, when mainstream publishers like Michael Joseph, like Victor Gollancz, did limited editions of their own, they would often be quite austere and plain, cloth-covered slipcase, no jacket on the book, full cloth right over the book, none of this quarter business, occasionally quarter, especially signed limited numbered page, and that really is the way to do it. My personal feeling about these is that I think it was £125 is the RRP, as it were, for this. And as I say, I got it in the sale half price some time ago, which is just after Christmas. I honestly think that's ridiculously expensive. That's really 35 plus quid for the books and the slipcase. And I was quite happy to pay 62, I think, or 62.50, because I really don't think that these are worth more than 25 to 30 pounds a pop. I think that's excessive. Really, a limited edition should give you a lot more in terms of other things. Like, for example, obviously the author's long gone. If they got Adam Roberts to sign them, that would have been something, number them. But strictly speaking, because these are not limited editions, even though Folio let things go out to print, they will undoubtedly bring these back. So they're not the real thing. But for those of us who need Wyndham in our library in hardcover, and we can't afford to chase the original editions because they're so expensive, and also finding them in good nick is like so difficult, then these are a good alternative, if not quite what I would want. But I would say I would not have paid the full price for these because I don't think they're worth it. Now recently, as regular viewers of the channel will know, I did get a little bit frustrated with Philip Jose Farmer, especially when he descends into his more cliched action-adventure hackwork mode, as he pretty much does in these books, the World of Tears series. And yes, we're still in limited editions, and these are Phantasia press editions from the 1980s of this series, which I've been acquiring over the last sort of year or so. And I just want to show you these again. I know you've seen the first two on the channel, and the first two there are the standard limited edition. What used to happen, the classic thing that these things would work, there would be a signed, numbered, slipcased limited edition, and then there would be a limited trade edition. And the trade edition was for general sale, cost less money, would sometimes go to bookshops or would go to customers who weren't so willing to pay out the extra money for a slipcase and a signed and numbered book. So you had those out there. And this was the model that everybody sort of pretty much used. It's still a model that happens now. I mean, PS still do it, Subterranean still do it, and it's very, very, very long established. So what you'll see here is the first two volumes, The Maker of Universes, looking wonderfully Beresian there, and The Gates of Creation, with those strange balloon things that the beings are riding on. That reminds me of, I don't know if you've ever seen the Hammer film of The Lost Continent by Dennis Wheatley. That's got some strange balloon sort of things in it as well. It's one of those films that you want to like, but it's actually really boring, but it looks really flaky. So maybe I'll pick it up one day because it does sort of stick in your head. Anyway, so these two are standard editions, and very, very nice. I think you'll agree. We'll just have a look inside. So quite nice end papers, and the boards are a kind of, they're laminated, but they're sort of faux leather, really, I would say is what they are. And as it says here in this one, trade edition $15, special edition $25, and this is from the early 80s. And these are sort of revised corrected text, and they have some very good introductions by Farmer in them. And occasionally what will happen is you will pick these up and you'll get the odd copy. I got all of these secondhand, as it were. The odd copy will be signed by the author, so you'll get a trade copy signed by the author, which sometimes in some ways can be more collectible than the limited, because of course, generally speaking, the authors didn't get to sign so many of the trades. So there's Gates of Creation close up, which, you know, very lurid pulp, silly cover, but you've just got to love it. I did get frustrated with this, but I'll go back to it one day and just have a look in here. And yeah, again, that's an unsigned trade. So there we go. So that gives you an idea of what the trades are like outside the slipcase. Then the third and fourth in the sequence, and I should say something I meant to mention is that Robert Wolfe, the main protagonist of the first two books in the series, he sort of moves aside a bit from the 3rd to the 5th for Kikaha, the trickster, who's also from planet Earth, the Native American Indian related character, who's a little bit more interesting. So he comes to the fore in the later volumes. And what you can see here is the limited edition of A Private Cosmos, and then the trade edition of the 4th book in the sequence, Behind the Walls of Terror. And you know, if I were a true completist, I would go for getting all of them either in standard trade or in the slips, but you know, I've just picked them up as they've come up. And there's Private Cosmos, there's the slipcase, as you see, similar sort of laminate to what you get on the books underneath. Very nice, very plain slipcase, but not bad. I like a cloth one myself, which tends to be the standard of the English publishers like Kerosena, like Morrigan, though also our friends at Underwood Miller, who we're going to look at later in this video, did as well. So let's just have a look at this. I mean, this is a fantastic jacket. Look at that. Absolutely gorgeous. It's got these strange bird beings in it and lovely yellow and blue. Really, really nice. And I think you'd agree that's fantastic wraparound art. And we'll just have a look inside. Oops. Now, what's dropped out of there is a map of the World of Tears, which I meant to show in the other video. And as my old recently departed friend Christopher Priest once said, I can't stand books with maps, but there you go. There's a little map of part of the World of Tears, which is tucked inside. Very, very nice. And I've got a feeling that's an extra, that only came with certain copies, but we'll just have a look inside now. So this is volume 3. And again, price differential, $18 trade, this special edition $30. And let's just find the, okay, what you've got at the back, it says here, this edition of A Private Cosmos by Philip Jose Farm is limited to 1,000 copies. The first 250 have been signed and numbered by the author in a special boxed edition. Now they've dropped the ball a bit there. It should say slipcase, because it's not a box, it's a slipcase. A box is something different. And there you go, number 134 with Farmer's own hand, very distinctive, and you can always tell a genuine Farmer signature. There we are. And as I say, underneath you've got, there you are, PJF. That is gilt embossed on the limiteds but not on the trades. Really nice, isn't it? Phantasia did lots of lovely stuff, actually. They were very, very good. I think they're defunct. I don't think they've done anything for a long time, but absolutely lovely. I think you'd agree. And this is a trade edition of Behind the Walls of Terror, which is a title I've always loved. Absolutely lovely. Great stuff. And this is the cheapest one to pick up. Look at that. Lurid as the day is long. And again, as I say, trade edition. So there isn't the embossed author. It's there, but it's not gilt embossed. So it's there on the standards, but on the limiteds it's gilt embossed. So there we are. Absolutely lovely. So that's volume 4. Finally, we have the limited edition of the Lava Light World, which was the 5th in the series. There were 2 other ones later on. I think Red Orc's Rage was the 6th one. I have read that one, and there's one after that, but they were quite different and went on a kind of sidebar. Nothing wrong with that, but I wasn't so keen on Farmer's work once he got the late 80s. I think he started to sort of lose it a bit. I'll be quite honest, I don't think it's quite there. And by that point I'd read a lot and I wasn't so interested, because there was a little bit too much action adventure for me, and that's why I've never been a completist. I prefer his more outrageous work. So let's just take a little look at this, and we pop it out of the slip, and that's a bit tight, that slip, and you've got really, really nice jacket there, as I think you'd agree. Let's get that. We've got the glare problem as ever, because it's covered in glassine as well. These are covered in glassine as well as being slipcased. They wouldn't have come in glassine, of course, when they're in a slip. They come without that. Later owners have put that on, which I'm grateful for. And yeah, absolutely fantastic. Look at that. It doesn't come much better than that. It's a very lurid pinks and blues. Really, really nice. Fantastic. So the kind of pulpy spirit is embodied in these, and they've really stuck to that and gone for that very special look, where I really, really like this thing. It's the distinction between high and low art. High art is, you know, glorious and presented very classically and perfectly. Low art should revel in its outsider status, and that's the thing about rock and roll. You know, it's like, you know, when the Velvet Underground, for example, merged the low art of rock and roll with the high art world of pop art and all that. You know, it created a new synthesis, and that's really important. So again, we'll have a look, and let's see. Art by Chris Miller, number 134. Again, and farmer's signature, this time in 3 tiers, reflecting the world of tiers. And again, limitation statement, which is in the back. Usually these in the front, again, 1,000 copies, 250 signed and numbered. So that's the standard. So the other 750 either went to bookshops, probably to specialists, or direct into the hands of dealers and collectors. So there we go. Even though these are not typical of the kind of small press activity I really love, which is books that nobody else does, nobody else will ever do, books which will probably never even have a mass market paperback edition. And as I said, Kerosene, PS, lots of these sort of publishers have done great work that way and got these manuscripts out there into the hands of the hardcore readers, and that's what we really love. But these are really nice. So, you know, it gave the author also a chance to put in revised text, to put in forwards, which sort of corrected things and put them into historical context, so that's really good. So these are sort of halfway in between what I would say the kind of folio things, the reissues of things like Dune we've seen recently, and the real hardcore small press stuff. But these are not to be sniffed at. Very beautiful, I think you'll agree. And we'll have a quick look at the paperbacks while we're here. These are the Sphere ones I remember selling. There's Maker of Universes and Gates of Creation. And because I've got frustrated with these, I've been thinking of parting with the paperbacks, but I look at them now and I have such fond memories of selling these. Private Cosmos, and these are Spheres, of course, beautiful editions, Behind the Walls of Terror, and they have that warm, lovely ludicrousness of pulp that we just love, that we can't get enough of. And it reminds me of a poem by Thomas M. Dish in which he compares us science fiction readers and fans. He uses the word cripple, which is a word that nobody uses these days, but this is from a poem that he wrote in the late 70s. And what he's saying is that we have a blind spot. We just love this stuff, and the rest of the literary world will look down on us as if, you know, we are to be pitied, but, you know, we don't care, we're outsiders, and that's what matters. And there's the Larvalike World, which came a lot later. As you see, it has different livery and things, because this one was a lot later. This wasn't published till the 80s, I think, or late 70s. Long awaited 5th book in World of Tears. Let's have a look at the date on that. 79, and the first World of Tears book was about 65. I think they were all 60s apart from this one, and that looks quite different, as you see, and I've got really warm memories of those, so I do think I'm going to hang on to them. I don't know where I'm going to put them because I'm really short of space these days, but lovely stuff. I think you'll agree. We're going to move on now and look at some Jack Vance in Underwood Miller. Right, what you're seeing here is the Lioness trilogy. There is a new Lioness trilogy by some young female fantasy author, and of course the word Lioness is related to the Arthurian Chronicles, as are these books. And what you're seeing on the left there is the Underwood Miller limited first edition of Sudren's Garden. In the UK, this has never been called Sudren's Garden, it's just been called Lioness, Sudren's Garden, I should say. And in the middle, you'll see the slipcase edition of the second book in the sequence, The Green Pearl, and then at the end, the Grafton UK hardcover edition of Lioness 3, Madook. And of course, if you get the Underwood Miller one, it's just called Madook. And I've included that as a sort of comparison. Also, I don't have the Underwood Miller Madook, and I think I'm going to stick with the Grafton one because I'm very fond of it. I got that from Derek Adiman, and it was on my birthday, must be 5-6 years ago. And I was there in Hayes shopping, and I was talking to him and Anne, who works in the shop as well, runs the shop, and they gave me a discount because they usually do. And I said it's my birthday today, and they said, oh, have a bit extra off, and he got me that and Moorcock's the trilogy from Hawkmoon, the latter 3 books in a hardcover. Get some money off that as well. Something else, so really nice. So great stuff. So save me some money, and it was a really pleasant exchange, something nice to look back on. So we're going to have a closer look at these and compare and contrast and talk about them. Go handheld again, so apologies for any shakes. So this is Sudren's Garden. I just want to show you the artwork close up. Isn't that absolutely charming? Absolutely charming. What I would really love is hardcovers of the Grafton ones. Of course, they weren't published in hardcover, the first 2, and I love the covers of those. And I do have them, but I'd like mint copies, and they're really hard to find. You can find them, but mint ones, just forget it. I've got ones which are kind of near fine, very good, but absolutely lovely. Look at that wraparound artwork, as you see. Now, Underwood Miller were formed by two chaps called Underwood and Miller, unsurprisingly, in the 70s, and they did loads of books. It's worth looking them up on ISFDB. Really nice, that, look at that, really nice. Not quite faux leather, I don't know what it is, but it's lovely. Nice jacket, and they were based in California. There's the end papers. And I did have a correspondence with one of the guys once in the early 90s, and I think there was some sort of schism between them, and they split apart and they went their own ways, and both their companies sort of then kind of folded eventually. I think they both had separate companies. And here we go, here's Jack Vance's signature, number 275 of 500, numbered, cloth bound. Okay, so say that's cloth, that's interesting. Doesn't feel like cloth to me. So, but as you see, that's in green. You might be able to see it there. That's a very dark green. Absolutely lovely. And there we go. Special edition, Children's Garden, 1983. And let's have a look. Yeah, first cloth edition. So the true first edition, then, by the sound of it, was a paperback, which is interesting. I'm not sure who published the paperback in the USA, but I think you'll agree, really lovely. Now, let's see what it says here. Really lovely, nice. What does that mean? In 1983, 500 copies, 500 for sale, and 550 copies, 50 mark presentation copy. So there you go, the presentation copies. Now, they would have been given away or sold to people in the know, insiders, big collectors, what have you. Really, really nice, isn't it? So if you've got presentation copy on anything, and I've got a few I've garnered over the years, that's really nice. So they're extra special, so watch out for them. Sometimes they just say PC on them. Sometimes they don't have a number. That means they're a presentation copy. Interesting stuff. What Underwood Miller did was they focused to a great degree on the work of Jack Vance. They did loads and loads and loads of them, and I'm going to show you more in an upcoming video which has a theme to it. It may be the next one up. It'll be quite soon, I promise. It's one I've wanted to do for ages, covers a number of authors and a particular Vance series. And they, did some beautiful work. Now, I've been collecting these for a while. They're quite expensive. You have to save up for them or do special deals. Occasionally you'll get lucky and one will pop through. And the thing with Jack Vance, the prices have really, really gone high since he died, and since more and more people are discovering what a wonderful stylist he was and what a great contributor to the history of SF as literature. And as for fantasy, well, his contribution to that is enormous through the Dying Earth book alone, let alone his sequels. And they did a lot of anthologies. There was some horror. They also did the selected letters of Philip K. Dick, which are the ones I've got. I'll show you those in another video at another time when we talk about PKD a bit more. They were sometimes inconsistent because, of course, small press, it depends, what funding you've got and what resources you can get cheap. It's not like a big publisher. So, for example, what you'll see here, this one, which is a really sort of velvety slipcase, which is lovely, feels like a kind of velvet or felt. And I'll pop that up. This is the Green Pearl, which is the second volume of Lioness. And I think you'll agree that's absolutely stunning. Beautiful. Look at that. Absolutely gorgeous. And what they also did books of art by the artists that they use. And Chris Miller was big. I'm not sure who this is. You notice I'm not a massive guy who sort of focuses on who the artists are. And, I would like a nice collection of SF art books, but very often, they appear and then they're gone. Let's have a look inside. And that, you see, is that is boards. I wonder if they think it's cloth, but that's boards. And inside you've got nice end papers with a little map. And let's see. There we go, limitation page in green ink, look, to suit the Green Pearl. Deluxe limited edition, 265 of 600 copies. Lovely. And yeah, these are Arthurian, of course, and green there. And I was talking to my friend Tom Toner, who I put him on to Jack Vance, because when I first read his novel, this first novel, The Promise of the Child, I said, are you a Jack Vance fan? And he'd not read Vance. And I said, well, you better have, because you love him. Your stuff is very like his. You're like a modern Jack Vance. And he went for it, and he does love Jack. But he has said to me that he doesn't really get on with these books particularly. Maybe that's because they're more fantasy based. So I'm just looking inside this one now for more details of the limitation. And let's have a look. The first edition was typeset separately from any other and differs from all other editions' author's preferred text. So there you go. So again, I think there was a paperback edition prior to this. And This doesn't have a limitation statement in the same way as the other one does, and that's quite interesting. So you see you get a little bit of charming inconsistency sometimes with these things, depending on time and resource, because these people aren't professionals. Not to say the books aren't professionally made, they're beautiful, but you get regular publishers who make mistakes as well. But I think you'll agree, absolutely stunning. And here's a look at that textured slipcase, which is absolutely gorgeous. Possibly the nicest slipcase I've got. I'm not mad about the colour. It would be nicer in green. But again, it's about, you know, what materials are available and costs, because, you know, you're doing this as a labour of love. Though, as the SF Encyclopedia said back in the 90s, it looked like they were getting close to becoming the real thing, to being a full-blown professional publisher. Sadly, the schism occurred and that never happened. There's Maduke in the Grafton UK hardcover first. There we are. Very, very nice. I absolutely love Grafton books, as you know if you watch the channel. They have an enormous meaning for me. And, you know, these are really hard to find in good nick. Absolutely gorgeous. You know, this is a standard edition, but Vance these days, even in standard editions, you know, you're looking at quite a bit of money sometimes. 30 quid is about a standard for a lot of them. Some of them are more. And maybe one day, if I can ever find one cheap enough, I'll go down the Underwood Miller route, just to have the set. But I'm quite happy with that. I really love that livery. And again, collecting across different liveries, it does give you the idea of the richness of publishing culture. And as I say, it's often about the personal meaning to me. So I really love that book and I would never part with it. Fantastic stuff. And here we have 3 more very fine examples of the art of publishing from Underwood Miller in limited editions. Absolutely gorgeous books, all 3 of them, all different, as you see. There isn't this thing, but they have to be consistent. It's just looking at the character of each book and putting across a character for each edition through the different illustration styles and the different typefaces and what have you. And as you see, what we have here left is a space opera. And again, some young female author recently has written a book called Space Opera. You can't copyright titles. Boy, I wish you could. We might have more originality. But and ironically, it's a similar sort of theme to this one. But look at that illustration. Isn't that absolutely gorgeous? Lovely. And in the middle, Galactic Effectuator, which is 2 novellas about a spy type character, which is great fun. Very plain livery, but I absolutely love it. And at the end, we have The Blue World, one of his great world building books, which people really, really love. And let's take a closer look at them. We'll just zoom in a little bit here. There's Space Opera. Absolutely gorgeous. And that style of pulp illustration is beautiful, isn't it? The plainness of Galactic Effectuator and that Blue World cover, wonderful. Nothing like a bit of underwater SF. If you haven't read The Blue World, I would say go for that one first out of these. Great fun book, very underrated. And that's the dust jacket rear for Space Opera with this beautiful black and greys and off-tone whites. Magnificent. And there's the band playing. Excellent. Isn't that absolutely fantastic? And I say this is a signed numbered limited as well. We'll just have a look. And sort of grey cloth there, very subtle soft cloth, really, really nice. And this is a trade edition, I think. Yeah, no, it's not. It's a numbered one. £15.95. Wow, that's a cheap one, because this is a smaller book. Number 176 of 200 copies, signed by the author in grey pen. And there's the illustration of the interior. Isn't that gorgeous? I love this book. 1984. And of course, you know, this was a paperback original, you know, back in the 60s. I mean, I've got a door of it. First published in this form in 1984, limited to 600 copies, 220 specially bound and signed by the author, 200 numbered, and 20 were marked presentation copy. So watch out for that. Acid-free paper with extended shelf life. Acid-free paper only became a thing, you know, around about that time, and it didn't become a regular thing in UK books till later. That's why a lot of your old paperbacks tone with age, because the paper has acid in it and it leaches out. But yeah, I think you'll agree that's absolutely stunning. And that's what you want. You want it to look, you want an sci-fi novel to look like a sci-fi novel. I'm going to descend and use that term for once. Absolutely gorgeous. So Underwood Miller there, they're working on the heritage of this author. They understand the appeal of the classic space opera in its most florid and ornate and witty and ironic form. And, you know, they're referencing that by putting this sort of genre cover on it, which is just beautiful. It's within the tradition. Lovely. Then we have Galactic Effectuator, which has the plainest livery possible. I think you'll agree. And as you'll notice, this is a larger format. The first two books of this tranche are Royals, and the one of Blue World is a demi, so smaller. So again, not consistent across formats, looking at what they could afford, what felt right for that individual book, and very, very plain livery, and a little text block on the back there, a little, it's not a text block, it's not a lozenge, a little panel there with some endorsements from Silverberg, Malmsberg, Herbert Russ, Anderson, Spinrad and Lynn Carter. And yeah, I think you'll agree that's really nice. Let's take a look at it. And yeah, nice slim cloth there, not too deep. I do like deep cloth, if I'm honest. And this, I think, yeah, this is a standard edition. It's got illustration there. And let's see, yeah, this is one of the standard editions, so there would have been probably about 600 of this, and signed edition is a different SBN, as you see. And let's see, let's have a look. Does it tell us anything in the back? 1,000 copies, August 1980, 200 signed and numbered, no presentations, acid-free paper. So that's a nice free acid-free paper book. And I mean, I know some of you find plain livery books really boring, but I love them. And it's because they take me back to the days when there were all sorts of publishers like Millington, Gollancz, who were doing a lot of hardcover SF. You didn't see it in the shops much in the UK. It went straight to libraries. And obviously this is a US book, so it's a different thing. But the plainness is just sort of like a joy, really, because it really reflects a more naive time, a time when people didn't feel that they had to market SF in the same way they knew as a small dedicated coterie, a ghetto of outsiders who really wanted to read it. It's quite romantic, really. And as Chris Priest said, you know, I much prefer my books had plain covers with just my name and the title on. And there is a classic simplicity there. And, you know, when you've got a title like Galactic Effectuator, you don't need an illustration. It tells you everything. Finally, the Blue World. And really lovely, as you can see, and beautiful spine. I absolutely love the whiteness of the spine and that turquoise lettering. Yeah, really, really nice. And this is a great one, actually. And a little list of the other things that they do, all sorts of things that Underwood Miller do. And great stuff. It would be nice to have them all, but gosh, you know, we're talking about telephone numbers, breaking the bank and all that stuff. And yeah, plain boards. I think this is just a standard one, because I can't recall, because I've been collecting these on and off, and a nice little pencil illustration. And this is Sea Monsters and Tribes. Great stuff. So I think that gives you an idea of what a true limited edition publisher who's looking at the hardcore fan base before we get to this new millennium we've been in the last 20 odd years was doing. And the numbering, the signing, the different editions. So you'd get a presentation copy, you'd get the standard signed numbered limited, and you get a trade copy. So it's quite exciting. Some would have slipcases. So, you know, tracking them all down, seeing the differences and variations, fantastic stuff. It's less about commerce and more about the moment, and that's the beauty of it. But when you go to, say, Eastern Press, who I love, don't get me wrong, or Folio, you know, it's more about standardization. Though with Folio, you will notice they do different sizes and formats as well, which is really interesting. But it has to be said, you know, obviously these publishers have to make money. It's business. I'm in the book business. I know all about that. It's been my thing for 40 years. But at the same time, when you see non-canonical books which quite frankly do not deserve to be in a canon, which will not endure long term except to the readers who read them when they were young. And I'm afraid I'm going to mention Becky Chambers in this thing. There's a Becky Chambers coming in Folio, and, you know, quite honestly, her work, as far as I'm concerned, and sue me if you want, I don't mean that literally, of course, because there's no point, I've got no money to give away, you know, it just doesn't have the sort of, it doesn't deserve, in my opinion, to really be in that pantheon of greats, you know, but it is what it is. And I think that's the difference. It's not to say that a publisher shouldn't do a limited edition, but it will never kind of have the credibility that these sort of books will have. And maybe I'm just being, you know, an old fart, who can say, but that's what I think. It's my channel. If you disagree, well, you know, there's other choices. But that's an insight into looking at the kind of special editions done for the mass market and the things which are a bit more special. Another time we look at more recent things from Newcon and PS and Subterranean, and we'll discuss them and see what we think. So I think that gives you a few insights into the kind of differences between the sort of more commercial, more mass markety special editions publishers like Folio, and when regular publishers do this sort of thing, they're more in that ballpark these days, and the sort of more dedicated small presses. And now really we're down to, in the UK it's Newcon, and PS in the US, Subterranean, Centipede. There are others, but I think things have changed, and more often than not what these people are doing is reprinting old books for people who can't afford the true firsts, and that's understandable, and often they're beautiful, like the Centipede ones. I don't own any myself because the cost of postage to the UK often costs almost as much as the book, and the books are expensive, and often I've got them in firsts anyway. And also the fact that, you know, Subterranean, as I've said before, are doing hardcover sort of editions, special editions for people who missed the true first, the Johnny Come Ladies. Nothing wrong with that, of course, but it's not really hardcore collecting in the way I see it, which is for firsts and for things which the mainstream publishers won't put up. Like I've shown in things like my Kerosena videos, which I'll put links to below as well, so you can have a look at those. I'm interested to see what you think about special editions and limited editions and your experiences, so please pop some comments below. Like, subscribe, super thanks, all that stuff, and I'll see you again soon. Bye for now. The fact is, if you want a really nice limited, you've got to go to a small press, and you can talk about Folio Society all you like, but there is something about Folio which really annoys me these days, which is the fact that, you know, they're very keen on canonical works. Well, to me, a small press really will do unusual stuff the author can't get out, stuff they're very passionate about, that appeals to a small audience but still deserves to be out there, and they'll do it with real love and care, and that's what the whole point of the small press thing is, really, to my way of thinking. Except these days, of course, it's coming more and more a way of packaging popular books again and again for people who will buy and buy and buy them. And